Can you imagine hearing these words from your own father? Get out of my house. I don't need a sick daughter. I was 15 years old, standing in our living room on a cold October evening. No coat, no phone, no money, just a school backpack with algebra homework inside and rain already hammering against the windows. 3 hours later, police found me unconscious on Route 9, and when they called my father to tell him what happened, his face went white as a ghost. But by then, it was way too late. I'm Sherry Walls. I'm 28 now, sitting in my Boston apartment with rain sliding down the window, and there's a letter on my kitchen table. Shaky handwriting on cheap nursing home stationery. After 13 years of silence, my father wants to see me. Says he's dying. Says he's sorry. Funny thing about rain, it always takes me back to that night, to the moment my whole world shattered, and to the person who orchestrated the entire thing. My own sister. If you want the full truth about what happened, hit that like button so this story reaches more people who need to hear it. The cracks in my family started long before that October storm. My mother, Patricia, died when I was 10 years old. Cancer took her piece by piece until there was nothing left but a hospital bed and machines that beeped slower and slower until they stopped. My sister Corrine was 14. One day we had a mom who made pancakes on Sunday mornings and braided my hair for school pictures. The next day we were orphans trying to figure out how to survive without her. My father didn't handle it well. He collapsed inward like a dying star, going to work and coming home only to sit in his recliner staring at nothing. The house could have burned down around him and I don't think he would have noticed. So Corrine stepped up. At 14, she became the one who cooked dinner, signed permission slips, and made sure I got to school on time. She became the responsible one, the mature one, and my father praised her constantly. What would I do without you, Corrine? You're so grown up. You're the glue holding this family together. I don't think he ever once asked how she was handling our mother's death. He just expected her to handle everything else instead. What nobody saw, what my father absolutely refused to see, was what happened when he wasn't looking. Corrine wasn't just stepping up. She was building a kingdom, and in her kingdom, I was the peasant who needed to be kept in place. It started small. Homework that mysteriously disappeared the night before it was due. Permission slips for field trips that somehow never made it to my teachers. My favorite shirts shrinking in the wash, one after another. Birthday party invitations I sent out that my friends never received. She was painting a picture of a troubled child, and everyone believed her because she seemed so caring, so responsible, so mature. 2 years after my mom died, my father remarried. Jolene was nice enough at first, smiled a lot and made casseroles and tried hard to fit in. Corrine immediately started calling her mom. It was strategic, I think, a way to cement her position as the good daughter, the loyal one. I couldn't do it. I couldn't call this stranger mom when my real mother had only been gone 2 years. That quiet rebellion cost me. From that day forward, Jolene treated me like an outsider in my own home. She and Corrine formed their own little club, and I wasn't invited. By the time I was 15, the battle lines were clearly drawn. Corrine was the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. I was the troubled one, the difficult one, the daughter who just couldn't get it together. But there was something else simmering beneath the surface, something that would eventually explode into that October night. Money. Comment justice if you believe I deserved protection that night. My mother had set up trust funds for both of us before she passed. $45,000 each, accessible when we turned 18. It wasn't a fortune, but it was something. A safety net. A gift from a mother who knew she wouldn't be there to help us start our adult lives. Corrine turned 18 in 2009 and got her share immediately. It was gone within 11 months. A flashy sports car, designer clothes, expensive gifts for her boyfriend Trent. A smooth-talking guy with big ideas and absolutely no legitimate income. By the time October 2011 rolled around, Corrine was completely broke. Her trust fund was a distant memory, and Trent was always talking about his next big opportunity, his next investment scheme, the deal that was definitely gonna make them rich. My $45,000 was just sitting there, untouchable until 2014 when I'd turn 18, unless something happened to me first. See, my mother's trust had a clause in it, a protection mechanism she probably thought would help us. If either daughter was declared legally incompetent or institutionalized before age 21, Her share would be managed by a court-appointed family guardian until she recovered. Corrine and Trent figured out what that meant. If I got institutionalized for substance problems, say because my father found pills and cash and evidence of dealing in my room, then someone would need to manage my trust fund on my behalf. Someone responsible. Someone trustworthy. Someone like a concerned older sister who only wanted what was best for me. $45,000. That's what I was worth to Corrine. That's the price she put on her own sister's life. The week before she destroyed my life, Corrine put her plan into motion with surgical precision. Small cash withdrawals from my father's account using his ATM card. She knew his PIN because she handled all the household finances. Trent's empty prescription bottles, collected and saved. A prepaid burner phone purchased at a convenience store, loaded with fake text messages to make it look like I was talking to dealers. On the morning of October 14th, while I was eating breakfast and thinking about my algebra test, Corrine slipped into my room and planted everything. Cash in my dresser drawer, pills in my closet, a paper with the burner phone number as proof of my contact. Then she went to our father with tears in her eyes and told him his youngest daughter had a terrible secret. He believed every word. Why wouldn't he? Corrine had spent 9 years being the perfect daughter, the responsible one, the one who never lied. And I had spent 9 years being painted as the troubled one before I even knew the portrait existed. I remember coming home from school that day like it was any other Tuesday. Backpack over one shoulder, head full of the algebra test I just aced. I was thinking about dinner, about homework, about the band poster I wanted to buy with my birthday money. Normal 15-year-old stuff. I had absolutely no idea that in less than 2 hours, I'd be walking alone through a freezing storm wondering if I was going to survive the night. The moment I stepped through that front door, I knew something was wrong. My father was standing in the living room looking like a volcano about to explode. His face was the color of raw meat. His hands were shaking, and he was holding a wad of cash in one fist and empty pill bottles in the other. Corrine stood right behind him with this expression on her face, concerned, worried, heartbroken. The perfect picture of a devoted older sister who just discovered something terrible about her baby sibling. But I saw her eyes. I caught that little flicker she couldn't quite hide. Satisfaction. My father didn't even let me put down my backpack. He started screaming like I'd set the house on fire. Said I'd been stealing from his wallet for months. Said I'd been buying pills, hiding them in my room. Said Corrine had found the evidence. I tried to explain, tried to tell him I'd never touched his wallet, never seen those pills, didn't even know what he was talking about. But the words died in my throat because I realized something horrible. He wasn't listening. His mind was already made up. Type yes if you want to see how everything came crashing down on them. Corrine had spent the whole day preparing him, feeding him lies like poison wrapped in sugar. She stood there looking devastated, telling him she'd tried so hard to help me, tried to get me to stop, but she just couldn't watch her little sister destroy herself anymore. It was a masterpiece performance, Academy Award worthy, and my father swallowed every single word like gospel truth. He grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises and dragged me toward the front door. Rain was already coming down in sheets, thunder rolling somewhere in the distance. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees since that morning. My father looked me dead in the eyes and said those words again. "Get out of my house. I don't need a sick daughter." He pushed me onto the porch. The door slammed. The deadbolt clicked. And just like that, at 15 years old, I was homeless. I stood on that porch for maybe 5 minutes, completely frozen. Not from the cold, though that was coming, but from shock. I kept waiting for the door to open again, waiting for someone to say it was all a big misunderstanding. Nobody came. My phone was sitting on my bedroom desk. I wasn't allowed to grab anything except what was already in my hands. My backpack had textbooks, a half-eaten granola bar, and absolutely nothing useful for surviving a night outside. So I started walking. I didn't make a conscious decision about where to go. My body just moved on autopilot toward the only safe place I knew. My grandmother Dorothy's house, 7 miles away. 7 miles doesn't sound like much when you're driving. When you're walking through freezing rain in canvas sneakers with no coat, it might as well be 700. Route 9 stretched ahead of me, dark and slick with rain. Cars splashed past without slowing down. I was just a shadow on the roadside, a shape nobody wanted to look at too closely. After the first mile, my clothes were soaked through to my skin. After the second mile, I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. After the third mile, my teeth were chattering so hard I thought they might crack. But I kept walking. What else could I do? The thing about hypothermia is that you don't realize it's happening until it's almost too late. Your body starts shutting down piece by piece, and your brain gets foggy, and suddenly sitting down for just a minute seems like the best idea in the world. I made it 4 miles before my legs gave out. There was a mailbox up ahead, and I remember thinking I'd just lean against it for a second, catch my breath, then keep going. Grandma's house was only 3 more miles. I could make it. But my knees buckled before I got there. The gravel came up fast, and then everything went dark. 3 hours after throwing his daughter into a storm, my father's phone rang. The voice on the other end was cold and professional. Officer Daniels with county police. There'd been an incident. His daughter had been found unconscious on Route 9. Hypothermia. She was being transported to County General Hospital. And one more thing, sir. Child Protective Services has been notified. A caseworker is already on site. And we have some questions about why a 15-year-old girl was walking alone in a dangerous storm with no coat and no phone. My father's face went pale as bone. Corrine was standing right next to him when he got that call, and for the first time her perfect mask slipped. Just for a second, but it was enough. Share this video so more people understand what was really hiding beneath the surface. Here's the thing about that night, the thing that changed everything. The woman who found me unconscious on that roadside wasn't just some random stranger driving home. Her name was Gloria Hensley, and she'd spent 35 years working for Child Protective Services. She'd seen every kind of mistreatment, every kind of neglect, every kind of lie that parents tell about their children. She knew exactly what she was looking at when she found a teenage girl in the rain with no coat and no phone and no one looking for her. And she wasn't about to let it slide. I don't remember much about collapsing, just the gravel biting into my palms and then nothing, like someone switched off a television in the middle of a show. What I remember is waking up. Fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic and industrial floor cleaner, a scratchy hospital blanket tucked around me like I was something fragile, something worth protecting. I hadn't felt that way in years. Gloria was sitting beside my bed, silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked like someone's grandmother, the kind who baked cookies and always had tissues in her purse. But her eyes were sharp, observant, cataloging everything they saw. She handed me a cup of terrible hospital coffee and said, "Now, why don't you tell me why a 15-year-old was walking alone on Route 9 in a storm with no coat and no phone?" So I told her everything, the accusations, the planted evidence, the years of Corine's manipulation. I told her things I'd never told anyone because no one had ever actually listened. Gloria just sat there, nodding occasionally, never interrupting, never doubting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said 7 words that changed my life. "I believe you, and I'm going to help you prove it." While I was unconscious, the hospital had contacted police, and police had tried to reach my next of kin. That meant calling my father. When he and Corine arrived at the hospital around 10:15 that night, they expected to find a scared, apologetic girl ready to confess and beg to come home. Instead, they found a room full of professionals asking very pointed questions about why a child was wandering alone in dangerous weather with no means of communication or protection. Then my grandmother arrived. Dorothy Reeves was 67 years old, 5 feet 2 inches of pure determination, and she was absolutely not in the mood for nonsense. She lived 40 minutes from the hospital. She made it in 25. I heard her before I saw her, that distinctive click of sensible heels coming down the hallway at a pace that meant business. She swept into my room like a small silver-haired hurricane and immediately positioned herself between me and my father. Grandma Dorothy didn't just love me. She fought for me. That night, while I sat exhausted and hypothermic in a hospital bed, she went to war. She demanded an emergency custody hearing, called a family court judge who owed her a favor, and by 12:30 in the morning, I had a new home. Emergency temporary guardianship was granted to Dorothy Reeves effective immediately. My father was ordered to have no contact with me until a full investigation was completed. CPS would be interviewing everyone, and they would be taking a very close look at that so-called evidence. But the real investigation was just beginning, and what they found would tear Kareen's perfect plan to shreds. If this shocked you, comment exposed below. The CPS investigator assigned to my case was a woman named Maria Santos. She wasn't just a caseworker checking boxes. She was a detective in a cardigan, and she didn't just look at evidence, she traced it. Every receipt, every timestamp, every thread. And the more she pulled, the more Kareen's perfect story unraveled. It started with the cash. $800 had been found in my dresser drawer, supposedly proving I'd been stealing from my father for months. Except Maria Santos actually checked the bank records. That $800 came from a single ATM withdrawal on October 14th, the same day I was kicked out. The bank provided surveillance footage from the machine. Timestamp 2:47 in the afternoon. The person on camera wasn't me. It was Kareen, clear as day. Same jacket she'd been wearing that morning. Same ponytail. Same car parked in the background, her white sedan with the dent in the bumper. Here's the thing about alibis. Mine was airtight. At 2:47 p.m. on October 14th, I was sitting in fifth period chemistry class learning about molecular bonds. The school attendance system showed me present until 3:15. My teacher remembered me asking a question about covalent electrons. I couldn't have made that withdrawal. Physically impossible. I was in a classroom 12 miles away, surrounded by 30 witnesses and an electronic check-in system. Then there were the pills. The bottles planted in my closet were traced back to a prescription for Trent Barlow, Kareen's boyfriend. Anxiety medication, prescribed by his doctor, filled at the pharmacy on Oak Street. Maria Santos called that pharmacy and made an interesting finding. Trent had reported those pills stolen, filed a police report and everything. Very concerned citizen behavior. Except he filed that report on October 17th, 3 days after I was kicked out. If those pills were already stolen and hidden in my room on October 14th, why did Trent wait 3 days to report the theft? The answer was obvious. Because they weren't stolen. Kareen gave them to him to plant, and then he reported them missing afterward to cover their tracks. But the real smoking gun was the burner phone. The fake dealer texts came from a prepaid phone purchased at a convenience store on October 10th, 4 days before everything went down. Maria Santos tracked down the store and requested their security footage. The buyer was a young woman, brown hair in a ponytail, athletic build, paid cash. But her car was clearly visible through the window. A white sedan with a dent in the bumper. Same car, same woman. Same trail of breadcrumbs leading straight back to my sister. As the investigation deepened, an even uglier picture emerged. Maria Santos started digging into our family's finances, specifically checks written on my father's account over the past 2 years. What she found made the $800 look like pocket change. Someone had been forging checks in my father's name for nearly 2 years. Small amounts at first, 50 here, 100 there, but they added up. The signatures were close but not quite right. The money went to accounts connected to Trent Barlow and his various business ventures. Total amount stolen, just under $18,000. Kareen hadn't just framed me. She'd been robbing our father blind for years, and she needed me gone before anyone noticed. My grandmother hired Leonard Vance, an old family friend who'd practiced family law for 30 years. He'd known my mother since grade school, and when Dorothy explained what had happened, his face went hard in a way that made me glad he was on my side. Leonard filed for permanent guardianship immediately. He also filed a civil suit against Kareen for fraud, emotional distress, and whatever else he could make stick. And he made sure my trust fund was protected with additional oversight, so nobody could touch it until I turned 18. Then something unexpected happened. 1 month before the court hearing, Trent Barlow got arrested in Nevada. Federal marshals picked him up for running an investment scam in 3 different states. Over $400,000 stolen from victims who trusted him with their savings. He was facing serious federal charges, possibly 15 years in prison. His lawyer made a phone call the next day. Trent was ready to cooperate, ready to make a deal, ready to tell the truth about everything, including his girlfriend Kareen and what she'd done to her little sister. Trent Barlow wasn't loyal. The moment federal prosecutors offered him a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation, He sang like a canary with a record deal. His written statement was 12 pages long. He confirmed everything. The plan to frame me had been Kareen's idea from the beginning. She'd been stealing from our father for nearly 2 years, funneling money to Trent for his investments. When she realized her theft was getting harder to hide, she decided she needed a scapegoat. That scapegoat was me. Kareen figured I was the perfect target, the troubled younger sister, the one who'd never fit in, the one nobody would believe. She told Trent that getting me institutionalized would solve 2 problems at once. She'd have someone to blame for the missing money, and she'd get access to my trust fund as my guardian. $45,000. That's what she planned to steal from me while I sat in some facility, discredited and completely alone. Trent wrote it all down, planning sessions, the pill bottles he provided, the burner phone Kareen purchased. The morning she planted the evidence in my room, he even included text messages between them from the days leading up to October 14th, messages that proved this wasn't impulsive. It was calculated, premeditated. His final line stayed with me. Kareen said her sister was a nobody who wouldn't fight back. She was wrong. March 2012. Family court. I'd been living with Grandma Dorothy for 5 months by then. I'd gained weight, the good kind, the kind that comes from regular meals and actual sleep. I'd made honor roll at my new school. I'd started to remember what it felt like to be a normal teenager. But walking into that courtroom, I felt 15 again, scared and small and wondering if anyone would believe me. The hearing was supposed to be about guardianship, simple stuff, making Dorothy's temporary custody permanent. But it turned into something much bigger. The district attorney had gotten involved. With Trent's confession and the mountain of evidence Maria Santos had compiled, this wasn't just a family court matter anymore. There were criminal charges on the table. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. The evidence was presented systematically, professionally, devastatingly. ATM footage showing Kareen making the withdrawal at 2:47 p.m. my school attendance records, proving I was in chemistry class at that exact time. Pharmacy records showing Trent's conveniently delayed theft report. Security footage from the convenience store showing Kareen buying the burner phone. 2 years of forged checks totaling $18,000. And Trent's confession, read into the record word by word. When it was Kareen's turn to take the stand, she tried to maintain her story, tried to look confused and innocent and deeply concerned about her troubled sister. The prosecutor wasn't having it. She showed Kareen the ATM photograph, clear as daylight. "Is this you at First National Bank on October 14th at 2:47 p.m.? Kareen swallowed hard. "I was getting money for groceries." The prosecutor nodded slowly. $800 in cash for groceries. "And you didn't mention this withdrawal to your father when you accused your sister of stealing that exact amount later that same day." Silence. Then they called Jolene, my stepmother. She'd spent years staying quiet, staying neutral, not getting involved. But this was a courtroom and she was under oath, and suddenly staying quiet wasn't an option anymore. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she testified. 2 days before the incident, I overheard Kareen on the phone with Trent. She said everything was in place. And then she laughed. The courtroom went absolutely still. When they called our father to testify, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He had to explain why he expelled his 15-year-old daughter into a storm without investigating the accusations against her. Had to admit he never checked the bank records himself, never questioned why Kareen suddenly discovered this evidence, never asked for my side of the story. His voice cracked when he said, "I just trusted her. She's my firstborn. She was always the responsible one." Judge Patricia Morrison had been on the bench for 30 years. She'd seen ugly custody battles, bitter divorces, families torn apart by lies and money and pride. But I think even she was disturbed by what she'd heard. Her words cut through the courtroom like a blade. "Mr. Walls, trust is not an excuse for negligence. You expelled a minor child into dangerous weather conditions based on unverified accusations. You made no attempt to investigate. You chose one daughter over another without evidence, without reason, without basic parental judgment. That is not parenting. That is abandonment." Kareen's sentence came down hard. Fraud, theft, filing false statements to law enforcement, child endangerment. Her public defender negotiated a plea deal to avoid a full trial. 2-year suspended sentence, meaning she wouldn't go to prison unless she violated probation. 5 years of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, full restitution of all stolen funds, and a permanent restraining order. Corrine was not allowed to contact me directly or indirectly for any reason. If she came within 500 feet of me, she'd go straight to jail. And here's the part that would follow her forever. Felony conviction, permanently on her record. No more jobs in finance. No positions involving money or trust. No working with children or vulnerable adults. The golden child had a scarlet letter now, and it wasn't coming off. My father lost guardianship rights permanently. He was ordered to pay for my therapy and educational expenses until I turned 21. The community found out everything. Small towns talk. Within weeks, everyone knew what Raymond Walls had done to his younger daughter. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors looked away. His church group suddenly had scheduling conflicts whenever he tried to attend. Jolene filed for divorce 6 weeks later. The judge turned to me at the end. "Ms. Walls, you've shown remarkable resilience in the face of extraordinary cruelty. The court grants full permanent custody to your grandmother, Dorothy Reeves. Your trust fund will remain protected until you reach 18, and I sincerely hope you have a better future than your past." Living with Grandma Dorothy was like learning to breathe again after years of holding my breath. Her house wasn't big or fancy, but it was warm and safe, and nobody there was plotting against me. She enrolled me in a new school where nobody knew my history. I made real friends for the first time, people who liked me for me. I started seeing a counselor, finally processing years of manipulation that I'd absorbed without even realizing. I turned 18 in 2014 and got access to my trust fund exactly as my mother intended. Used it for college, got my degree in marketing, started my career, built a life that was mine, not controlled by anyone else's lies or manipulation. Fast forward to today. I'm 28 years old. I'm a marketing director for a tech startup in Boston. I have an apartment with a view of the harbor. I'm engaged to a pediatric nurse named Colin who spilled wine on my dress at a friend's party and made me laugh instead of apologizing like a normal person. We're getting married next spring. And then that letter arrived. Shaky handwriting on cheap nursing home stationery. My father, Raymond Walls, is dying. Emphysema. He has maybe 6 months left. After 13 years of silence, he wants to see me. Says he's sorry. Says he understands if I can't forgive him, but he needed to try. I sat at my kitchen table for 3 days staring at that letter. Part of me wanted to throw it away, pretend it never arrived, let him die alone the way he left me alone on that October night. But another part of me, the part that survived and grew stronger, knew I needed closure. Not for him, for me. So I went, drove 2 hours to that nursing home, walked down the hallway that smelled like disinfectant and regret, and sat down across from a frail old man who barely resembled the father I remembered. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Sherry, you came." I nodded. "I did, but I'm not here to make you feel better about what you did. I'm here because I need to close this chapter for myself." He apologized, really apologized. Not with excuses or justifications, just raw honesty about how wrong he'd been, how blind, how completely he'd failed me as a father. He told me Corrine had tried to contact him twice over the years, but he'd refused to see her. Said he couldn't look at her face without seeing what she'd done. He told me he'd followed my life from a distance, heard about my graduation, my job, my engagement. Said he was proud of me even though he had no right to be. I listened, and when he finished, I said something I never thought I'd say. "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I'm choosing not to carry this anger anymore. Forgiveness doesn't mean I forget. It doesn't mean we're family again. It just means I'm letting go of the weight so I can keep moving forward." He died 3 months later. I didn't go to the funeral. Didn't need to. I'd already said everything that needed to be said. As for Corrine, I have no idea where she is now, and I don't care. The restraining order is still active. She's not allowed to contact me, and honestly, I hope she never tries. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some people are meant to stay in your past where they can't hurt you anymore. That October night 13 years ago, my father thought he was throwing away a problem, cleaning house, cutting out the bad apple. What he actually did was set me free. Free from a toxic family. Free from years of manipulation. free to build a life on my own terms with people who actually loved me. Some storms don't destroy you. They redirect you towards something better than you ever imagined. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button. Comment below and tell me, would you have visited your father after 13 years? And subscribe, because I have more untold stories about people who refuse to stay victims, stories about revenge, resilience, and what happens when the truth finally comes to light. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.